I might actually play a little more Torchlight Infinite tonight. I've been having a good time playing it. It's actually really fun. Like I think the combat and the loot hunting of the aspect of the game it does it really well. Like those are the two aspects that I really do enjoy about the game. Mobile PoE, yeah, exactly. And I can definitely see that for sure. A lot of it is inspired from PoE. So PoE, like the gem system. The gem system is a big one. The itemization in general with like the attributes on items, that's another one. But the gem system is straight off of PoE, where you have like a main skill and you link it to like support skills to support gems. It's like the gem system in PoE. Like a lot of the gems are even just they're all very similar, like bigger AoE or concentrated effect AoE or faster projectiles or multiple projectiles or all those skills and all those skill supports stuff that you link to your skills is like all the same from PoE. And then you have kind of the same structure where like you pick a class but you aren't locked to what skills you use with that class. You can use whatever skills you want with whatever class you pick, but then there's some differences. Even the skill trees are all the same, right? And then there's some differences with the specific hero traits. So there's some small special differences between characters, but you can kind of build each character how you like. And then, yeah, like I said, the itemization of the items have all the same attributes, like how you get the resistance on gear, which that's actually like a D2 thing, right? Like PoE, so PoE was heavily inspired from D2, and now Torchlight is heavily inspired from PoE, so Torchlight is also going to have a lot of those D2 elements in there. Even the mapping system, how like the maps work, how you go on a map, and then I think the end game is very similar in that you just run maps, which you just blast through and get to the end boss. I don't know if the mods on the maps are going to be the same or not, but they have like also the PoE has these league mechanics, which Torchlight is doing the same thing. They're trying to do 3-month leagues, and every league is going to have a special league mechanic, and then the league mechanic is something that you interact with and complete as like an additional activity on the maps that you do. And in this league for Torchlight, they're doing the corruption thing. So I think I forgot what they call it in Torchlight, but in Torchlight it's the same thing. They're copying the PoE corrupt system where, oh yeah, I think they call it Scourge or something. Yeah, you corrupt your item and you have a chance of like getting like a better weapon, a better item. It's like a random RNG roll when you corrupt your item, but at the same time you can also kind of like ruin your item. So it's like a gamble crafting system. And I haven't gotten that far in Torchlight yet, but I hear that Torchlight also has like a more extensive crafting system, which is probably going to be very similar to PoE also. If you ask me, what is the better game between Torchlight Infinite and Diablo Immortal? I don't know if I can give you just a straightforward answer to that, right? Like, there's some things that are done better by each game. I think they both have their pros and cons. For example, Torchlight Infinite, I'm not really that far into it yet, but so far from the combat, I feel like the combat is really fast paced and runs really smoothly, like very fluid. Now, Diablo always has had that as a big major pro too for Diablo. Diablo has always had really smooth and fluid combat also. So they both have that. Although in Torchlight Infinite, they kind of let you play more zoom in Torchlight Infinite. Basically, Torchlight Infinite is kind of like how PoE is with the zoom, or at least before PoE started to like really try to nerf a lot of the mobility. The PoE was like, well, we're going to try to nerf players because they're moving too fast. Meanwhile, Torchlight Infinite came out, and Torchlight Infinite was like, we got you. You can do zoom. You can go as fast as you want, really. You can go very speedy. And it does, Torchlight Infinite does have that heavy inspiration from PoE, and in a lot of good ways, in a lot of really good ways of like the similar like gem skill system that PoE has. Also, Torchlight Infinite has full ultra wide support. The game is a little more zoomed out, which I prefer, and the PC client runs very, very well. The PC client makes it feel like it's not a mobile game. It doesn't feel like a mobile game. When you use the PC client, it feels like a PC game, which I feel like Torchlight Infinite has a little bit of an advantage over DI in that aspect, because Diablo Immortal, when you're playing Diablo Immortal on the PC client, it feels like you're playing a mobile game. It's very clear that you're playing a mobile game when you're using the PC client for Diablo Immortal. The menuing and the UI is very just much the same as the mobile version. Even like the skills here look like the mobile setup for the skills. And it really comes down to very simple things like not having mouse overs, right? Mousing over something and getting a tooltip to pop up, that's a PC thing, right? And Torchlight Infinite has that. Torchlight Infinite has mouse overs. It has a very fast and quick UI. It's very easy to navigate through menus in Torchlight Infinite. So I think that's one of the major advantages Torchlight Infinite's PC client has. The one thing that I feel like Torchlight Infinite is missing is it's missing. I'm not really that far into Torchlight, but it's missing more of the social aspects. Because Torchlight Infinite is more of a like traditional ARPG in that it doesn't really have much of the MMO aspects added to it. For example, Diablo Immortal, they have like clan features, they have clan activities, they have a faction versus faction, they have battleground PvP, they have zone events, they have these public areas when you run into other players and you can team up with them and do things together. All that stuff, Diablo Immortal has kind of adopted more of the newer trend nowadays in gaming, where they do these MMO aspects in games, even in ARPGs like this, right? So that is kind of a preference thing, I would say. I didn't think I would like the MMO stuff, like that having more social features, but after playing Immortal, I have grown a liking to it. Especially as a clan leader now. As a clan leader, you know, having a group of people to play with and do things together with is quite fun, actually. It's quite fun. I know some people when playing games, they're completely allergic to partying up with other people. They just can't like they can't fathom the idea of grouping up with other people and playing with other people. They want to play a game completely solo. And if that's how you like your ARPGs, then Torchlight Infinite might actually be a better game for you. Because it is, from what I've seen so far, it is just mainly just like you can just solo blast it. Whereas DI, a lot of the activities require groups and partying up and such. And it's gotten a little better in DI. They just removed the party requirement for dungeons. But you're always going to be going at a slower pace solo in DI. Because the dungeons are still going to have their difficulty set to 4 players, even if you go in solo. And that's kind of the idea for DI. That's kind of by design. DI is designed so that you're always incentivized to group up and do things together. It's always in your best interest. And they kind of got it wrong at first by forcing people to group up. At first, Diablo Immortal Blizzard was like, okay, well, you have to have 4 players to even start the dungeon, which is it was the wrong move. They have corrected it now. Now it's you can go in solo, but you're gonna be clearing at a slower pace than if you just brought 4 people, and you're not gonna get a bonus. You're not gonna get the bonus chest loot at the end, right? So it's better to incentivize people to group up than force people to group up. And then of course the whole faction versus faction stuff in Immortal with the Shadows versus Immortals, there's, you know, if you're not doing that stuff, then you're just missing out and on rewards there. So it's highly encouraged that you do all that stuff. Even Battlegrounds has rewards to it. Granted, it's only like 3 rewards per day for the Battlegrounds, and then you get reforged stones after a rain change, after the leaderboards reset, which are very much worth grinding for. So yeah, it's just really, really hard for me to say whether or not DI or Torchlight Infinite is the better game here, right? They have their differences. And some of it's up to preference. The pay to win aspect, I can't really comment on Torchlight Infinite's pay to win aspect quite yet. I'm still too early into Torchlight Infinite to really know how the pay to win is. But the thing is honestly, I don't know if I care how much pay to win Torchlight Infinite has. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but Torchlight Infinite doesn't have any PvP or any of that group activity stuff, right? It doesn't have any, like, if there was PvP, or if Torchlight Infinite was a competitive game, then that's when pay to win matters to me, because I enjoy PvP, and that's the other thing that I consider a con for Torchlight Infinite is the lack of PvP, right? There's no PvP. I don't think there's any PvP in it. And honestly, I don't know if they can even balance the game with PvP in mind. It might be kind of hard to do, because if they're following this route where the game is taking a lot of inspiration from PoE players know that there's PvP in the game, but no one does it, and no one really cares about PvP in the game because it's not organized and it's not really balanced. It's not. The thing about PvP balance is you kind of have to think about PvP balance when you are designing the game, as you have to think about it right away. You can't just, like, it's really hard to make a game and then add on PvP later as an afterthought without any consideration of PvP from the beginning, right? Because it's just going to be really hard to balance from there. We saw this as a problem with PoE. We saw this as a problem in D3 after they finally added brawling to D3. By that time, you know, they just couldn't really balance it. And the funny thing is that D3 had promised to have organized PvP, promised to have arena style PvP at first, and then they pushed it back, and they released the game and said we're eventually gonna give you the arena style PvP, but it just never happened. And I think, you know, after a certain point, it was just impossible to do. The brawling was added as kind of like a consolation, really, for PvP. Brawling was nowhere near what arena was going to be, what they had promised with arena. Diablo Immortal has been thinking about PvP from the beginning, added in battlegrounds from the beginning, and is trying to balance the game around it. And it's probably why you don't see, like, super zoomy builds in Diablo Immortal, because you can't be zooming around the map in a battleground fight and have it be balanced, right? You kind of have to slow down the gameplay a little bit and keep players a little more rooted so that they can't just jump all over the place and do whatever objectives and fight and run away and fight whoever they want to in battlegrounds, right? Lack of PvP is definitely a con for me for Torchlight. So, you know, I'm a big PvP enthusiast. I enjoy PvP quite a bit, and that was one of my major draws to DI, was the fact that we played the second alpha test, and they had included battlegrounds, and it was the first time in the Diablo franchise that we actually got organized PvP. So that's a major draw for me for DI. But along with that PvP, along with enjoying PvP, comes that problem of fighting against other players that are using pay to win. For me, it makes the pay to win worse when you include PvP. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like Torchlight Infinite, I don't really care about what other people are doing in terms of pay to win, because I'm not actually fighting them. But at the same time, it kind of sucks to not have any PvP. You think Undecember kind of combines both, but it has solo play and acts like Diablo, but also guilds, raids, and PvP. Well, that's interesting. That's a pretty interesting mix for Undecember, yeah. From what I've heard, Undecember's pay to win is really bad though, so if the pay to win is super bad, some people have even said it's worse than DI's, which is surprising, hard to believe, but I mean, if the pay to win is that bad in Undecember and that you have like competitive PvP, unless they do some sort of normalization or reduce the effectiveness of the pay to win, then it's gonna be a bad time for competitive people that don't swipe constantly, right? You don't care about pay to win at all in the general game. You're getting sick of getting slammed by 7k residue players in the BGs. Yeah, exactly, man. Also, I mean, I think the problem with Immortal is that even if you're not a PvPer in Immortal, you kind of have to deal with other players that are just swiping more than you. I mean, even in like the leaderboards, like, you know, we have challenge with leaderboards, which are PvE activities that give you rewards there. And then, you know, having to have a whale that swipe for combat rating carry you in activities that you don't have the combat rating for. Yeah, it becomes pretty apparent there too. There are the leaderboards in DI, and there's a lot of group play in DI. You do kind of see it quite a bit. You kind of see, you can notice like someone that's just way stronger than you because they did swipe more than you. Whereas, I don't know, Torchlight Infinite, I think Torchlight Infinite's designed more to just be like completely soloable, where you don't have to worry too much about grouping up. But man, does Torchlight Infinite scratch that itch for me, where like I want to play something that's really fast paced and uses a lot of APM. Fudge just stares into everyone's soul. Careful guys, don't stare back at him. He will hypnotize you. This is how he gets everyone to convert to the clan, to join Clan Fudge and do his bidding. You stare into his eyes, he stares back into your soul, and then you're his forever.
He's not like that cat on TikTok.
For all of eternity.
He still blinks.
Don't do it, guys. I'm telling you guys, don't look at him.
He's looking right at the camera.
Don't look at him. He's trying to take your soul right now.